Hi everyone, my name is Nolan Doyle. I'm a teacher at Clover Hill High School. I teach math, and I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes or so showing you some of the tools powered by Desmos that can help you create some powerful formative assessments for your classroom. So Desmos is a graphing calculator, and the calculator or calculators that Desmos has created can be found at desmos.com. But Desmos also has some activities that can be used for really any subject area. And those activities can be found at teacher.desmos.com. And that's where you can create your own activities as well. And when you're ready to run your activity and give it to your students, they'd go to student.desmos.com to run that activity. So again, here's desmos.com, where you can use the graphing calculator or four-function and scientific calculator. Here's teacher.desmos.com, where you can find pre-made activities or create your own. And then here's student.desmos.com, where your students will go to run that activity. When we think about formative assessment, we want something that's going to provide feedback to not only the teacher, but also the student. And we want to use that feedback to improve our teaching and the learning of the students. So the teacher dashboard that's on the teacher end of things for the activity is going to be really powerful in helping us take student responses, quickly collect them, and then use them and display them as part of our instruction. So our instruction becomes, facilitating discussions instead of teacher-centered. It's very student-centered, and we can lead those discussions that are going to be centered on students' ideas, not our own ideas. So really powerful stuff that we're going to see going on here. So I've got one activity ready to go for us, and so we've got a class code that I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste into student.desmos.com, and we're going to see that that's where you would go, and all of a sudden we're actually not going to sign in. We're going to continue without signing in. That's what we want our students to do in Chesterfield, because there are some issues, some privacy issues with that. So you're allowed to have your own teacher account, but students would need to continue without signing in. They're going to enter their name in, and then they're ready to go. Your end as the teacher is that teacher dashboard. So I can get rid of this class code once my students get started. And this is what I'm seeing as my students work the activity. So over here is a list of all the names of the students that have entered into the activity. And I've actually got anonymous names on here. And this is really cool. So if we want to display some student responses, we can anonymize it. And those are famous mathematicians and scientists. So when we display student responses in front of everyone, we don't have to worry about focusing on who's right, who's wrong. We can just focus on having discussions about the content. So I'm going to keep it in anonymous mode. And this right now is the summary view. So you see these tabs in the upper right-hand corner. And the summary view is going to give me a quick little idea of where all my students are. I can see what screen they're on. I can see who's behind, who's maybe moving too fast. And maybe I need to redirect them back to, reflect on some of their answers a little bit further. The little dots show that they have interacted with the screen, but there's no way for the technology to grade that screen. The checker X means there's a screen that the technology and the program can grade itself automatically. And the little dash is just saying that there's nothing there for the student to do on that screen. Maybe it's just directions. So you can see a quick snapshot of where everyone's at in the summary view. The student view gives you the view of the student. So we are on screen 1. This is what screen 1 is asking our students. And this type of question that we created is a multi-select. So students would be able to select as many choices as they want here. And what I see as the teacher, as students are doing this, if I go to teacher view, is in this case, I get a nice quick histogram of all the responses. So this gives me some quick feedback, and then I can also use this and display it. Again, it's in anonymous mode. So all these are their fake names. We don't have to worry about who said what. Students getting embarrassed. But everyone's participating, right? I'm getting insight into all the thinking of my students, and I can use it at the center of our discussion. So maybe we can talk about, well, this is interesting. We've got 18, most students said this was important. Or this one, not as many people said this was important. Why do you think that is? As we go through these slides, kind of think about not just the content, but the structure of the slide and what type of questions and things you might want to use for your own classroom. So we go back to student view and work on slide 2. So here I've actually used the calculator to create a problem where we're going to drag these little points to where we think these cities are. So just kind of a little hack of using the calculator in a way that helps us in other subject areas. And so what I love about this is if I go to teacher view, I can see each individual response, which is great. But which is awesome, I love this overlay feature. So if I hit overlay, I can see all the responses at once on top of each other. So we can see Richmond and Austin, we maybe did a little bit better, and Topeka, we're all over the place. So we can see the little darker areas are where there are more responses. The lighter areas are probably just single responses there. So that overlay feature for me has been a really powerful tool to lead some cool discussions in class. It just creates a nice visual for our students. All right, so back to student view, slide 3. Here is a card sort. So students are going to drag these cards, right? We don't have to create this with cutting out things and laminating. We just do it right in the technology. And what I love too is it creates a record of it. So we can come back to this at any point, and I can also see all the student responses at once. So students are going to drag and drop to connect the cards they want to group together. And the teacher view gives me a quick overview of who's right, who's wrong. I can see green, I can see red, I can see the gray cards that haven't been matched up yet, and I can click on individual students to see exactly what they did and how we might want to correct it. And so that group's going to be red if there's just one card that's incorrect. So you might want to look a little bit further and then go help the groups and give them maybe hints as they're working. So as you're doing activities, you get that feedback live in real time. So it's really a balance of you kind of being behind your computer at that dashboard, but still circulating around the room, listening to your students and helping your students as they go through. And one thing I like to do too is have students pair up sometimes. So two students per one screen works really well a lot. So there's an example of a card sort. Here's a sketch feature. So we want to underline the object twice so they can draw right on this picture and then circle the subject once. And so again, when I go to the teacher view, I can see individual responses, which is pretty helpful in this one. The overlay might not be as helpful, but sometimes it's just fun to throw it up there and kids get a kick out of it. But we can see there are some maybe incorrect responses in there that we got to go back and pinpoint what their mistake might be. Screen 5 is another card sort. So this one, I threw in some road signs, and there are some cards that are left over in this one. So I go back to that teacher screen, and I can see the correct one here. We had 3 groups of 2, and then we had 2 cards that are left over. So there's a lot of flexibility when you're creating that card sort of how you want them to be grouped. Here's a sketch. So I asked them to shade in the chloroplast. So again, that teacher screen, individual responses. The overlay might be kind of interesting to look at. Okay, we've got definitely some incorrect answers going on here that we would want to address and talk about as a class. 7 is a multiple choice. What I like about this one is it's not multi-select, but then it prompts students to explain their thinking. And then it goes even further. After they share with class, 3 other students' responses would show up here. So this might be something where I'm not necessarily assessing what they know. I'm giving them an opportunity to put in their thinking and also expose them to the thinking of some of their classmates. So I really like that feature and that option there. As a teacher, again, I can see a quick histogram, and then I get some insight into their thinking, individual responses. And so we could talk about these as a class. I can click on it and make it bigger. But another thing I can do is I click these little cameras. It's a snapshot captured. So maybe as students are working, I'm like, yeah, I want to go over these. And then I'm going to go over to my snapshots tab, and I'm going to order these into a presentation. Maybe I want to compare these 2 responses. I might pick a good one because this one's blank, but you get the idea. If I can start to sequence how I want to go over this and click present. And so maybe we can, who do you agree with here? We can start to have a debate as a class, or maybe we just want to talk about any of these responses or highlight them as, hey, these are really great responses. Or how can we make these responses better so we don't just want to talk about correct answers, we can also talk about incorrect answers or question or try to improve upon. So that snapshot feature is really cool. I love that feature. Slide 8 is a marble slide, so this is more for math teachers. Fun way you can maneuver this equation and get kids playing a game. So you would want to maneuver it in a way that when we hit launch, those marbles are going to fall and collect all those stars. Screen 9, I created this where they could just drag this point to yes or no. So maybe we just stay on this screen, and I can actually paste students to this specific screen. So if I hit pasting, I can make all my students go to screen 9, and they can't navigate away from that screen. And so I could ask them questions in real time, ask them to move their point to a yes or no, or they agree or disagree. Maybe we're having a debate. And then I can pause them so they can't move it now. And I can direct their attention back to me. So I love these. These are called the classroom conversation tools that allow you to have a little more control as students are going through an activity. So you don't just have to give them full reign of, okay, go through the entire activity. Maybe you actually go slide by slide with them. Or you can even do a range of slides. And so you can say, okay, now work on screens 9 and 10. And then you could pause them, have a discussion, let them keep going on further. So some really cool tools here that can help you as you're navigating and facilitating the activity. And then finally, I had a final screen here. I was just telling them, you're done. Everything's been submitted, so they don't have to save anything. They don't have to click a submit button. Everything's updating in this dashboard in real time, which is pretty cool. All right, so you kind of got the idea of the student perspective and the teacher perspective and how we might use that teacher dashboard. Let's go and look at how we can create an activity. So if I go to teacher.desmos.com, I'm going to sign in, so I'm already signed in here. And I'm going to go to custom. And I have two options for the type of activity. I can do just a basic activity. I can also do a polygraph, which is really cool. If you've ever played Guess Who, it's like that, but you can basically, instead of using people, use anything you want. So it's really great for building vocabulary. So if you have something that's really rich in vocabulary, you might want to use that. Again, I want to sign in, so I'm just going to sign in with Google. And I'm going to create my activity. So I'm going to give it a title. I'm going to start building. And so over here, it's kind of like building a presentation or Google Slides. I can add screens and different slides. I can delete them. I can duplicate them. I just did that by accident, but maybe you're going to have some very similar screens. You build one and the next one's going to be very similar. You can just duplicate it instead of starting from scratch. And then these are the different components that I can add. So I'm just going to do a quick example here of a multiple choice. So I can put a title up here, but I can also just write the question up here, or I can just leave it blank. So I'm going to actually go ahead and do a note, and the note will be my question. Who won the Super Bowl? And then what I want to do is give my students some choices. So we can say the Saints. We could say Eagles. The Rams. And I can add as many choices as I want. The other thing I like is that I can actually add a graph or an image as a choice. So I'm going to bring an image up that I've saved to my desktop. And then I'm going to select that as the correct answer so that my teacher dashboard will grade it with a check or an X based on what students say. I have an option to randomize choices. And in this case, I don't want to show classmates' responses. I want students to be able to just come up with it on their own. And now I can hit preview, and I can see my question and see my choices. And I actually had explain your thinking as checked, and we're going to go ahead and take that away. So what I can do is up here, instead of saying explain, I can just do simple. And so now this is not a question that they really need to explain their answer. They would just click on it and then move to the next screen. And then you have the option here, as we saw before, some multi-select questions that you could do as well if there's more than one answer. Let's do one more screen so you can see the sketch feature, because that was one of my favorites. Again, I'm going to go ahead and this time, instead of using a note, I'm going to put the question up here. So let's think about this. Let's actually do the sketch feature first. And the options are I can have a blank background. So if I go to preview, students, it's just blank. Students can draw all over that however they want. That's useful. You could do a graph, so you could leave the graph blank. You could also edit it, put something already there that they have to write over top of. Or you can do any image you want. So I'm just going to do a fun little one. I'm going to have a picture of me. And I'm just going to ask my students, give Mr. Doyle some fun facial hair. I go to preview. Students can sketch right on that picture. All right, and this is what I used for the questions earlier, like the English question where they were circling the subject and underlining the object. Also for the chloroplast question. So you can put any image you want in there that you would want students to sketch on over. All right, so I've got 2 screens. Great. Just the right amount of length for maybe a warm-up or an exit ticket that I put together. And I'm going to hit next. I can add a description here. I could add an image here that's kind of goes with the activity. Or I can just leave it blank. I hit publish, and it's ready to use. So I just hit create class code and view dashboard. Give my students that class code, and I can monitor their progress and look at all the results right here on the teacher dashboard. And I can go back to teacher.desmos.com. And at any point, I can go to my custom activities and find that activity. And I can create as many class codes as I want, however many times I want to use it, and go back to that history and revisit my student responses in the future. So everything saves. So that's a little bit about Desmos and the activity builder to create some really cool formative assessments. That teacher dashboard, I think, is really valuable in collecting student responses, but then also using it as part of your instruction, which goes a little bit beyond, I think, some of the other tools that are out there as far as online activities go. We looked at a student perspective, teacher perspective, how to build and run your own. And for more information, head to learn.desmos.com. Lots of tutorials, videos, and information to help you continue learning more. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you learned something useful and can apply it to your classroom.